Sewing for dolls is actually quite hard. Everything is super tiny, you need to be really precise, and your sewing machine might have a tendency to actually eat your projects. So I wanted to share some of my top tips that I've learned over the last year or two in sewing for my dolls. We have a clipboard. Okay, the first one is actually stitch length on the machine. So let me just show you how to change this. Ideally, you want to do a 2mm stitch length, which is a lot smaller, and it just gives you a little bit more control when sewing, especially like tiny pieces or sewing around corners. And it also helps to prevent the seams from ripping when you're like kind of pressing out the item. So let me show you how to do that on my machine. Okay, so every machine is going to be slightly different, but on this Janome machine, you see the stitch length here. The standard stitch length is 2.2, which is fine, but it is a little bit big. So you want to drop that to, I prefer 2, but some people may go down to 1.8. I personally find that very small. And if you make any mistakes, it's quite hard to kind of rip it out. And that'll be one of my other tips. Needle size. So the smallest needle that you can actually use with normal thread, I believe, is 70-10. So these are the ones that I use. You can just see here. It definitely helps with sewing on those smaller pieces and just making sure that there's like no damage to the fabric. It also helps with that smaller stitch size as well. And you might just find like it's a lot easier to sew when they're a little bit smaller. But yeah, just make sure that if you get anything smaller than this, then you might need different threads. So that was my local sewing shop that gave me that tip. But yeah, I find these ones really good. Another tip is a seam ripper. So if you do make any mistakes when you are sewing and you need to kind of take it apart and you don't want to start again, you can use these little devices to kind of like unstitch the threads. And these are quite good for tiny things because they actually do work on like really small spaces. So I would definitely recommend getting one of these so that you save a bit of time not having to like redo everything. Okay, tiny iron. You don't want to be like lugging out a massive iron and a massive ironing board every time you want to sew something that's like 12 centimeters large. So this is a game changer in terms of just, yeah, like having less space and just being able to do it on your desk or something. And also it just helps with tiny little seams and kind of making it look more professional. And my final tip is to get a notebook or a project book for all of your sewing experiences and patterns that you've tried. What I use this for is to just make notes of the things that within patterns that I liked or what I might change, or for example, like the length of things. If I thought something was like too puffy or needed shortening, I'll add the notes there. And then that makes it really helpful when you like want to remake another pattern, but it maybe wasn't something that you really liked totally and you maybe want to amend something. So yeah, I think you'll find that really helpful. And yeah, this is just my kind of little book of all of my tips and tricks that I've learned. I hope those tips were helpful and happy sewing. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave them down below in the comments. I will do my best to answer them, but I am a hobby sewist. I'm not a professional. But yeah, I am learning as I go and maybe we can learn together.